This is a Subaru Outback, and if you've had eyes for the last 15 years, you've seen plenty of these on the road. They've all looked about the same since 2010, and they're kind of formulaically perfect, and I kind of am irritated by that because I don't especially like a lot of things about them, but oh, they're so good. Let's get into that. Welcome to Out Motorsports, the channel for cars as you are. My name is Jake, and this is a 2025 Subaru Outback Touring XT. This is the fully loaded model for 2025, and we've already seen that Subaru is doing a new one for 2026. It's just been seen in spy shots. We don't know the whole look and feel and everything of it quite yet, but this is the outgoing version, and like I said, it's just kind of like disgustingly good. And I want to get into that because there are certain cars in this world, and I think this is one of them, that are just formulaically so perfect, and they are the perfect car for so many people, and really a lot of competitors can't touch something like this for a lot of reasons. The Volkswagen GTI is another one. So I want to talk about that because I have a personal relationship with the Outback, and I've been doing a lot of reflecting. So let's start with my personal relationship with this body style of Outback. When I was in college, our family's Ford Escape had a transmission failure, and my parents elected to replace it with a new car. And they looked at every single midsize-ish crossover on the market. They wanted something that could fit 4 6-footers, that could haul a bunch of things, that was easy enough to drive, that was good enough on gas, that had some performance to it, etc., etc. And they picked a 2011 Subaru Outback Limited, I think it is. I don't know, it's a fully loaded one with the 3.6 and the 5-speed automatic. And that car looks like this car. Subaru has iterated on it since then. They've got different drivetrains, they've got obviously very different interiors, much more updated technology, but like fundamentally, this is what they own, just older. And I drove it to their house from the dealership. They bought it in my college town. I drove it home, and I've got a lot of seat time in theirs over the past bunch of years. And I don't like it that much, but it's so good. And I grapple with this all the time, and I'm trying to put words to it. So having this one is kind of an interesting, I've been reflecting a lot. And there's a lot to like about these. So I want to start there. So first things first, this one has a power tailgate, my parents does not. You have a ton of cargo space back here. So you have plenty of room for all your things. If you put the seats down in the second row, this is a cavernous interior for how big the car is, or really how big the car is not. That is a huge win. We have transported things in ours that would not fit in a large 3-row crossover because the shape of the hatch opening is the perfect size here. Everything is carved out nicely in the interior. Subaru did a killer job on this interior for the sake of practicality. And then I mentioned putting 4 6-footers in a car like this. My parents take their friends out to dinner. When I'm visiting, we want to drive their car around because I have a 2-seat sports car. And you can fit 4 6-footers and there's stuff in this car. And like I said, it's not that big. And then you compound that with the fact that you still have an elevated seating position for looking out over the road. You still have pretty good ground clearance. These have just under 9 inches of ground clearance, and you've got all-wheel drive. So this will go anywhere, and it's effectively a wagon in high heels, which is really formulaically perfect. So you have everything you need. The seating position is great. You can put a lot of stuff and people in it, and it's smaller and easier to deal with than most other crossovers. If you compare this against something like a RAV4 or a Highlander or a Mazda CX-50 or a CR-V or whatever, everything is a little more awkward to get into. The hip point is higher where your hips are gonna sit when you're in the seat, so you have to kind of climb up. This you just sit down in. I'm just sitting right now. And there is so much to like about this. And with Subaru going to this new body style, all the spy shots make it look much more boxy, which, okay, you know, this has to evolve. We are more than ready for this design to change up. I just hope they don't lose everything I just talked about, because all of my gripes are with how these things drive, but they are just a perfect package. Before we get behind the wheel, a little bit about drivetrains. I mentioned this is the XT. Every XT version of the Outback gets their corporate 2.4-liter turbocharged boxer 4-cylinder, making 260 horsepower and 277 pound-feet of torque. It is paired exclusively to a continuously variable transmission. That's been a thing they've been doing for almost 10 years, about 10 years, I guess, and you get standard symmetrical all-wheel drive, like I mentioned. If you don't get the XT, you're going to get a non-turbocharged version of this same engine, which is down by about 70 or 80 horsepower and about 100 pound-feet of torque. So I think there's a lot of benefits to getting the XT. The regular naturally aspirated 2.4 can feel kind of slow, but you know, either way, they've got these things geared to where you just kind of don't notice it. We'll talk about that more in a second. This is an evolution of what they've done since my mom's car. That one, hers has the 3.6 liter flat six, which was a big engine. It's terrible on gas. It made similar power and torque to this. It's down a little bit. And back then they also had a 2.4 that was also mated to a CVT, and it made, I don't know, some sort of power and torque, but less. So in any case, that's what you're getting here. It's all pretty tried and true at this point. And while this is all okay, I do think Subaru is kind of ready for some hybrids. They just showed off the Crosstrek hybrid, and my hope is that the upcoming Outback has also got some hybrid, at least as an option if you really want it. But like I said, my current kind of complaints with these are just in a bit of the driving experience. So let's get behind the wheel and talk all about it. Okay, so driving the 2025 Outback. The interesting thing here is that while the drivetrains have changed, like I mentioned, this drives just like my mom's 2011. And that is to say, the ride is fantastic. It's got really good body control. I generally like it. I think it's comfortable in that regard. The drivetrain is just very elastic. It's very rubber bandy, and that's not exactly, oh, it's just got a CVT, because hers has a 5-speed torque converter automatic and it behaves the exact same way. It just comes down to how Subaru has set these things up. They are not built for the enthusiast driver. And I want something that feels a little more direct, that feels a little bit more engaging. This is none percent engaging. They're quite capable. We took one off-road when they came out with the Outback Wilderness in 2022, but it's not really, it's not a driver's car in the slightest, despite having plenty of power and torque. And it just kind of sloughs power around and does what it needs to and is kind of unobtrusive, although being a boxer, it does sound kind of interesting, at least, you know? I wouldn't say it's like, ooh, it's like a cut rate Porsche, because it's not. But, I mean, here, I'll kind of punch it as we're accelerating again. And once you get over that kind of initial elasticity of the, you know, accelerator input versus power output and CVT-ness, it is quick and it sounds okay. You heard the EyeSight driver assistance stuff go off. It's a little overeager, and that brings me to my other kind of irritant here with the Outback. Subaru, I think, has never been like a tech leader, and in particular, this is feeling a touch old. And, you know, that's okay. They're doing a new one next year, so I'm not going to rag on it too much. But, you know, there's just stuff that's ready to be updated. EyeSight is one of them. I think they've upgraded the system a little bit for 2025, but it just still feels not necessarily class leading in some ways. But the driving experience is just so, the whole thing is good, and I'm irritated because it's like, it's so good as to be unremarkable, and I think that bothers me as an enthusiast because I am so focused on the charm and the character and all that, and really all that is some nonsense, because all of that is just imperfection that all of us are like, but daddy, I can fix him. And this is a car that doesn't really need fixing. It's just kind of, I don't know, it's not sexy. And again, as an enthusiast, you kind of want something sexy, but it's so perfect. And then the other thing that gets me a little irritated is not actually about this car. It's the fact that everything that competes against it is like a little more charming and endearing, but markedly worse in some way. And if you want to have something that has as much interior space that's like usable and practical as this, that has a decent step in height, that's not jacked up to the moon, that is pleasant and, you know, has an okay sound system and good visibility and all that, like, there is so much good here. All that's left is the Volvo XC60. Everything else, if you love your Outback but want like a little bit nicer or a little more Swedish, that's your only option. Everything else is not. There's that boxer engine. Plenty snappy. It's kind of elastic. I don't hate this car. I just don't. It doesn't get me going at all. But it's like it's charming in its own way because it's so I don't know. Subarus have this thing to them that is, they're quirky, right? They're offbeat. And there is an appeal to the right kind of person. I think my appeals just lie with other parts of the market, but I'm really hoping that with the new one, they don't get rid of the Subaru-ness and instead just make it perhaps a little sharper to drive, a little less rubber bandy in places, but like keep the excellent visibility, keep the excellent packaging, keep what makes this thing so appealing. Because if they just come out with yet another big crossover, like they're gonna lose what makes this thing so unique in the market. And you know, it may not be for me, but it was for my parents. And to that point, they have had theirs since brand new in 2011, and it's kind of almost time for a new car just because they're tired of the one they have. And we've looked at everything. We've done all this discussion about what about this, what about that, and we have come back several times to the point of, should we just get another Outback? Because there is so much that they love about theirs, despite being ready for a new car that is not just another Outback, that when I present them with some option, they're like, well, it doesn't do that. Well, and their reasoning is legit, right? It's tricky. Because I drive all sorts of other cars, many of which you see on this channel, that are faster, better handling, better stopping, more interesting to look at, come in better colors, but they're not as good of a holistic package as this is. And the pricing on these is killer. This is fully loaded, it's $44,000, and that includes the optional all-weather mats, are like 100 something bucks, so it's like 42 and change plus delivery. And I mean, Subaru is like, they're killing it on this. And I appreciate it for what it is. I really, this is so not me. I don't really want one, but I get it. And I just, with all of this, I just hope that they don't screw up the next generation. That's really where I'm at. If you're an enthusiast, like, this is not for you. However, if you want car as appliance and your needs are similar to what my parents were back a bunch of years ago, when they said we want to fit all these, you know, people and things, we don't want to pay a ton of money, we want it to be nice, we want it to be maneuverable and easy enough to park and just deal with otherwise, this is your car. And these are just good, and I understand why I like them and I understand why I don't like them, and I just, you know, even though it's not for me, I hope that whatever they do next can be as successful as this one, because this is the one that kind of took them mainstream in 2010 versus the smaller actual wagony models. This was the one that got a little bit bigger but kept that Outback ethos and vibe and just went gangbusters. So here's hoping. Thank you for listening to my nostalgic rant and hopefully productive comments on this. I hope you enjoyed at least parts of it. And be sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for coming along. As always, let us know what you want to see, what you don't want to see, and stay safe, be well. See you for the next one.